Cole Campbell, yeah. And the reason he's leaving is because Niko Kovac believes he's too close of a profile to Karim Adeyemi, so he doesn't need him. And off to Hoffenheim he's going. And if you're a U.S. men's national team fan and you're worried about Hoffenheim as a destination, Hoffenheim, we haven't really talked much about them this season. You wrote a newsletter about them very recently, which was excellent. So if you haven't paid attention to them, that's a really good place to start, I think. But they are like just on the outside of a Champions League spot at the moment. They
Mm.
play some of the best football in the league. Ilsner is I personally think he's a great coach with some really weird habits. And his magic drink with the dildo and all that kind of stuff comes to mind. But, he gets results. He's very well liked at the club. He's very well liked with the players. He makes players better. He did so in Austria, and he is doing so now in Hoffenheim. And he's obviously identified Cole Campbell as a player who can come in and help the team right away. And so they're ready to sign him. I think it's a loan with an option to buy.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just crazy that Dortmund are thinking the thinking here is that, oh, we don't have time and space for this player because we already have a player in Karim Adeyemi who can play the same role, but who also happens to be injured all the time as well.
Yeah, it's a very odd one because at times that Dortmund front line has looked very tired, very jaded, very in need of replacements. You know, I think Dortmund fans are counting down the days until Duranville returns from injury, so he can kind of help fill in the blanks there.
Mm.
Adeyemi's looked tired. Um, I think Bayer has looked really kind of anything but the player he was at Hoffenheim, because he's kind of running through brick walls every week, trying to cover as much space he can. Girassi, we've talked a lot about, either tired or jaded as well, not quite the player he once was. A player like Cole Campbell should be the perfect, candidate to kind of offer something different and kind of just inject a bit of youthful exuberance into that front line. And it is definitely, I think it's something that will probably mark Niko Kovac down with a lot of Dortmund fans, and I know a lot of fans aren't particularly happy with him to begin with. And nothing kind of puts fans off a head coach or a sporting director or whatever than selling good young players from the academy. But unfortunately, this is something that Dortmund often do. I think people outside of Germany think Dortmund are this kind of like remarkable, you know, producers of developing talent, like akin to like an Ajax or a Benfica or something, and they're just not that. Um,
Mm-mm.
they sign and sell maybe one or two players from France or England every 3 or 4 years for a lot of money, but besides that, huge a lot of duds that they pick up in the transfer window, and there's a huge amount of players, young players who slip through the net and then go on to succeed elsewhere. And it seems to happen time and time again that youth academy players
Yep.
just do not thrive at Dortmund. I was actually trying to think of the last Dortmund academy player who actually made it into the first team, and that aside from maybe like Tom Rota, who obviously then had to leave to go to Union Berlin to get game time.
It was
Um,
Mario. It was Mario Götze.
yeah, and of course, maybe Marco Reus technically counts, but he obviously had to leave to go to Gladbach. So it's a club that have a really really bad record for kind of developing players. And I guess you can maybe say someone like Jamie Gittins or Christian Pulisic did play in the youth academy for a while before moving into the first team, but
Yeah,
um, I mean, I still kind of maintain that Gittins
I
wouldn't
think
have anyone near.
Pulisic is the only one who counts, maybe other than Götze, because he did spend significant time in the academy,
Yeah, yeah, and they
and
picked him up very young.
he is having a good career, so you can
Yeah,
say him.
yeah.
But like, when was the last time they produced a German national team player? Like, when was the
Mm.
last time they produced the Dortmund equivalent of Jamal Musiala?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's very few examples of equivalents of Jamal Musiala, but
Yeah,
you're
but
right,
yeah,
and, and that's a problem that Dortmund have to grapple with, and they're not doing a very good job of it.
yeah.
But what I would say on the flip side is if I was a US, fan, or US men's national team fan, and I was a bit concerned about Cole Campbell, because a lot of them will be looking at this and thinking, "Oh, he's leaving Dortmund. It means he's not very good."
Mm.
Um, this is the last we'll ever hear from him, perhaps. And I think it's quite opposite of that, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
him moving to Hoffenheim could make his career. It could be a perfect career move for him. To be honest, Hoffenheim have been one of the best teams in the league this season,
Mhm.
full of excellent young players. As you said, Christian Ilzer is developing a lot of young players that are
Yeah.
very, very well. And while the club's maybe a bit of a mess in the background, at least the sporting project seems to really kind of kick into gear. And they really are a bit of a force to be reckoned with. And interestingly enough, Cole Campbell seems to be coming in here as a kind of long-term replacement for Bazamuna Toure, I can't speak here, who they obviously picked up in the summer there, but there's obviously reports that he'll be moving on even perhaps as soon as the January transfer window, but I think they're kind of
Mhm.
hoping for a summer move because if I'm not mistaken, he's currently playing at AFCON.
Mhm.
So they're already kind of thinking, we'll pick this guy up on loan, play for the rest of the season as a kind of understudy to Toure, um, and then I think there's an option to sign for like €7 million or something in the summer window. So from a Cole Campbell point of view, I think this is actually a really smart move. So Hoffenheim are very good developing young players. They've got a great history of developing youth players. We've talked about it in recent in podcasts in the past about why Hoffenheim as a club is really good for developing young players because there's literally nothing to do there. So it's very hard to have your head turned, and you can just kind of focus on the football. There's not much media attention, etc., etc. But they do have a really good track record of selling players on to like the Premier League and to other Bundesliga clubs.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Campbell's going to get a lot more game time there than he would at Dortmund. And I wouldn't be surprised, Manu, if in like 1 or 2 years' time we're talking about him moving on to like an AC Milan or a Chelsea or whatever else, having succeeded at Hoffenheim, and we'll say, he should have moved. This is why he had to leave Dortmund.
Well, also like the structure of the deal is quite interesting. So they have to pay 1.5 million euros to loan him, and then they have a 7 million euro option to buy. But if he hits a certain amount of games, the 1.5 million loan fee will be reduced to zero. So like there's they have to play him. Is what I'm saying to save money. And that 7 million euro option to buy, I've seen some comments that like that's a lot of money. Let's say he plays really well the second half of the season, scores a bunch of goals in the Bundesliga, and jumps onto makes the US men's national team World Cup squad. Then
Mm,
7 million euros is nothing.
yeah, exactly.
All right. So yeah, it's a really I think it's a no-brainer upside deal. And it also like every Bundesliga club talks about how important the US market is. That puts Hoffenheim on the radar right there.
Mm,
So it's such a smart move. And as you said, Toure is a player who's I think half the Premier League has been linked to him because he's doing well at
mm,
AFCON. Has been playing well in the Bundesliga. But yeah, there's a lot of criticize about Hoffenheim. The youth development is not one of those things. They have done very well in that department. So if Cole Campbell goes there, I think it's a good move.